Hi everyone, welcome back to Taji's World of Books, and this is my Sarah J. Maas weekly reading wrap-up. Hi you guys, so thank you so much for tuning in, and I was super excited about doing a reread of A Court of Thorn and Roses and the whole series to get prepared for A Court of Silver Flames, and so I did that. I also prepared a couple of clips in advance of my review of A Court of Thorn and Roses. So I am going to go ahead and insert that here so that you can hear my thoughts about that, and then I'll come back and talk more about the rest of the series. Okay, so, A Court of Thorn and Roses has been around for a very long time, so I'm not going to go into detail. Many of you guys already know what this is about. I think many of us are doing a reread of this series so that we are prepared to read A Court of Silver Flames, and like many other, that's what I'm doing. So I just wanted to come on here and give you my thoughts after I've read this through the second time. And let me say, I loved it as much as I did the first time. It's still a 5 out of 5 star for me this go round. I think what I really want to say is that I've read a lot of commentary about Tamlin. And when I read this book the first time around, I still feel the same way about Tamlin now as I did then, which is Tamlin gets a bad rap. In this particular book, Tamlin, his motives are not great. He does lie by omission because he's not able to reveal the curse. He's not able to talk about what happened to his court. He's got to find a mortal woman who he basically brings to his court and gets her to fall in love with him without revealing what happened, and she has to come by it without magic, without trickery, and by her own volition. And Feyre does that. And in this book, Tamlin loves her. Tamlin is sincere about his love. He cares a great deal about her. He goes through... He is willing to sacrifice her, and I think he does sacrifice her when he sends her back to her village and he asks her to leave. That is his way of keeping her away from harm. Where Tamlin starts to fall apart and where things go wrong is under the mountain and with Amarantha. I think Amarantha broke him. And what I'm most frustrated about is at the tail end of this and then going into, A Court of Mist and Fury, is that he doesn't try to sacrifice himself or to do things that he needs to do to keep Feyre safe. He doesn't do anything. It's almost like he's paralyzed by fear, and that's his biggest problem. Like, he sat on this curse for 50 years. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't try to save himself. And so when we see that, like, it comes to being under the mountain, right, and having to go through the battles and sacrifices that Feyre has to go through in order to free them from the curse, he doesn't do anything, and that is what is ultimately very, very frustrating for me. And that's where he's lost himself, and ultimately is where in this book he loses Feyre, because rather than when he gets an opportunity to save her and help her to escape from the mountain and to escape these trials that Amarantha is putting her under, and when Rhysand has her in this gossamer dress and she's all painted up, the first opportunity, what does he try to do? He tries to have sex with her, rather than saying, like, let's get you out of here, let's keep you safe, let's do what we need to do to ensure that you're okay. And then when we move into this book, he's so afraid. I think he really is broken because he's so afraid of losing her and wanting to keep her safe when he gets his powers back, rather than to empower her, rather than to encourage her and to see his own PTSD and her PTSD and help them both work through that. He locks her up and says, okay, thanks, but now I don't need you anymore. And so, you know, we've accomplished the mission and I'm going to take it from here. And that's what Feyre takes umbrage with. And that's where he doesn't see her power. He doesn't try to support her. He only sees what's good for him and what he wants. And he becomes an alpha asshole, like not the cool alpha male that we all love or that I love. He becomes an alpha asshole. And that then becomes the problem because he doesn't try to empower her. He tries to lock her up and he physically locks her away. And that's like the straw that broke the camel's back. And that is why then Rhysand becomes so appealing, because Rhysand gives Feyre the space to heal. He gives Feyre the space to make her own decisions. He trusts her to decide what is best for her and her own fate. And he gives her the tools and the resources and the space, you know, to do that. And that's what she needed from Tamlin. So here, it is still my belief that Tamlin is good, and he's still okay here. He hasn't gone awry. He loses his damn mind in this book. And I love that Rhysand says in this book, I have no doubt that Tamlin loves you, but love, he loves you too much, and that degree of love that he has is poison. And Rhysand is 100% correct, because it poisoned him, it poisoned her, and it poisoned their entire relationship, because he couldn't trust, he couldn't bend, he couldn't give in, he couldn't allow the relationship to be what it was. Rather, he needed to be something other than what Feyre could ever be, and she suffocated under his protection. That's what it was. She suffered under his protection, and she suffocated, and he ultimately destroyed the relationship as a result. So that's where I'm at with this so far, and I think that's the most important things that we need to say about that. So back on to my next clip. Okay, so I'm going to continue on a little bit about A Court of Mist and Fury. Now, you know, I spoke about Tamlin. I spoke about my thoughts about Tamlin. We're going to talk a little bit more about Tamlin in the future. But in this particular book, this is where Rhysand comes in. And Rhysand really, as I said before, gave Feyre the space to heal. He saw that she was being suffocated and drowning. And, you know, he gave her the opportunity to... He tried different things with her. You know, do you need to paint? Do you need to fight? Do you need to train? Do you need to... He gave her a lot of space to be able to work through her trauma. And he saw her for who she is rather than who he wanted her to be, which was Tamlin's downfall. Tamlin also was very influenced by Ianthe. And I think Ianthe and what she did to Feyre really, and what Tamlin allowed, really got blamed on Tamlin. Like, look, it's a plot point, right? I understand that Sarah needed to destroy Tamlin's character in order to build up and allow Rhysand to come in. But this is where I really take umbrage and have a lot of problems with this, is because Rhysand, everything that Feyre does, which she becomes a monster in this book to me. She becomes this arrogant, and you see it a lot in Wings and Ruin, where she then takes on this persona of like, I am above all, and you know what I need and what I'm going to do to others, regardless of how that impacts other people, really is excused and not taken into consideration in the same way that it would be with other characters. So here, I love this book. I love the relationship between Rhysand and Feyre, but I do believe that the person towards the end that Feyre becomes is, I don't really care for her. She is hypocritical. She does things, like, I think that they made it sound like Tamlin, what Tamlin did was not cool, okay, for sure. but they made it sound like Tamlin was as bad as Baron, you know, the Autumn Court, the High Lord of the Autumn Court, and he's not. Like, Tamlin's biggest thing is that he didn't stand up and do what he needed to do to protect Feyre, not necessarily that that he abused her or he harmed her in some way. And the way that Rhysand treats him is very much like, you know, like he was abusive to her and he harmed her in some way. And I guess I just didn't see it. And what I don't like when we move into A Court of Wings and Ruin is that now Feyre is deceitful. She, you know, goes back to the Spring Court and she is on a mission to destroy Tamlin. And I don't understand that. Listen, he's not the best guy, but does he deserve to be destroyed? And what they continue to do to Tamlin throughout, even though, like, at the end of this book, when Rhysand is dying, Tamlin doesn't have to give a part of his power. If it were me, I'd be like, psh, you're on your own, dude. I'm not doing anything for you, considering what you guys have done to me and destroyed. And Tamlin is pissed in this book. And he has every right to be pissed because he was deceived and lied to. And let me also say, nobody at any point has ever said in all these books, Tamlin in this book was the one who stepped up and bought the cottage and brought them out of poverty, gave them money, restored her father's health, made sure that the sisters, Elaine and Nesta, had everything that they need so that they could return to a life that they had become accustomed to. Do they ever say thank you over here? No, nobody ever says thank you. Everybody always points out the things that Tamlin has done wrong, but they don't point out the things. He has flaws, and everybody has flaws. And guess what? Here, Rhysand reaches out and helps Tamlin. Helps Feyre to recover and to heal. Who's helping Tamlin over here? Everybody, and they turn their nose up when, in this book, when, you know, Lucien says, I'm going to go back and spend winter solstice with him. He's alone. He's isolated. He's by himself. He's been destroyed. You've taken everything from him, and yet and still, like, you know, you're not supposed to. You get the opportunity to heal. Somebody cares, because it's love. It's love that allows us to, that when someone loves us enough to care, to step in, to support and help you, to do the things for yourself that you are unable to do, or at least to show you the way and show you the path. And here, you just don't get that. And Feyre does a lot of the things, like what she did to the young lord at the summer court. Was it the summer court? I think it was the summer court. His name is, I can't remember his name, but the dude where they went in and they stole part of the book from him underneath his nose, when he showed him compassion and kindness and opened the doors for him, even despite everything that he had heard, and they still did that to him, and Feyre had no compunction about it. So I just am like, Feyre, dude, you know, I am not okay with the hypocritical nature of who she is, and then especially when we come into, let's turn it the right way, especially when we come into A Court of Frost and Starlight, Feyre does exactly what Lucien did to her, to a lesser degree, to Elaine. Elaine is a boring character, and we don't know enough about Elaine, and we haven't heard a lot from Elaine because Feyre and Rhysand don't allow her to become, don't allow her to. They hold her back. And they speak for her, and they speak for the things that they think Elaine needs, as opposed to allowing Elaine to evolve and decide for herself. And so, you know, I just think that, you know, Feyre, in a very short amount of time, without all of the character development that I would have liked to have seen, she's gone from living in a hovel and being impoverished to being this mastermind, deceiver, court politics, reading, managing all these business affairs. And I'm just like, it's not believable and it's not viable to me. Now, granted, I love the relationship between Rhysand. I love how much Rhysand loves her. I love how much Rhysand is willing to do for his family. I don't like the fact that they've sort of stepped in and are preventing Lucien And Lucian, rightfully so, is like, I'm not your errand boy, and I'm not gonna, I don't need to be donated to, and I'm not gonna turn my back after centuries of being with Tamlin just to leave him isolated and alone. And Rhysand is so bitter and so angry towards Tamlin. Granted, I did see a hint of compassion when he went to the Spring Court and saw that Tamlin was in, just devastated. This is a woman that he loved, and nobody anywhere, everybody's saying he deserved it. He deserves everything he got. What really did he do other than not step up and be the person that he should have been? How many people have we had in our lives that you're like, you're an asshole, you haven't stepped up, but I'm not going to go and do everything I can to destroy and take everything away from you. And guess what? Tamlin hasn't recovered from that. He's not recovered from it, and he's not given the space to be able to do that. And that's what, because he's a man, he's supposed to just bounce back and just move on? Like, no, that I'm just not cool with that. So in here, the relationship between Elaine and Lucian is not allowed to develop and evolve, and they kind of stand in the way of it. And then Feyre really takes this place of like, I'm the High Lady. And somewhere in one of the books, like, Tamlin correctly says, like, what, being by my side wasn't enough? Like, you needed more? Like, you were so ambitious that, this is what you needed and this is what you wanted. I wasn't good enough. And I'm like, he's pissed, but I'm not mad at him because it needed to be said and somebody needed to step up. And that leads me into the next book, Nesta. I love Nesta because Nesta doesn't take Feyre's bullshit. Nesta is like, you're not going to talk to, she's nasty. And she needs to be nasty because she's standing up for herself, because Feyre just is like, I know best for everybody, and Rhysand is just going to let me do it, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to take over and decide what happens for everybody. And I guess maybe my personality is one, it's like, but no, you're not. No, don't tell me what to do. And I think that's how I feel about Feyre and those books. I loved this story. I absolutely loved it because I didn't have to deal with Feyre and her like know-it-all self. She just irritates me. I loved Nesta in the sense that Nesta was hurting and Nesta was angry and Nesta has trauma and Nesta has PTSD. But again, in this book, they gave her the space. They cared about her enough to step up and say, we are going to help you because we see that you're destroying yourself and you need the support. And that's what bothers me about Tamlin. Tamlin has nobody. Nobody steps up for Tamlin other than Lucian to say, listen, you're destroying yourself. Let us help you help yourself, because sometimes stuff gets so heavy and so bad that you can't do it for yourself, and you need the people around you who love you to support you and encourage you to get there. And Tamlin doesn't have that. So in this book, I love the story between Cassian and Nesta. I love that Cassian, again, is like, he helps her to find her voice, to find her family, to find her friends, he trains her through training. The stairs become an outlet and a way for her to express frustration and anger and rage. And Nesta, like, I get it. She feels the way I do about Feyre, which is we love her and we respect her, but at the same time, it's like, I'm pissed at you for everything because it's always about you, and you guys have ganged up against me, and they did, but Nesta was, I guess I'm saying that I understand it, and I understand where it came from, why Nesta felt the way that she did. I loved how Sarah showed like exposure therapy and exposure to the crackling fire and what that brought up for her. I loved how they talked about that, sometimes when you're in a traumatic experience, yes, you are self-focused and you are looking in at how it impacted you and you don't look at how it impacted others. And so, Elaine is the one who's like, listen, this happened to me. You need to step out of yourself and know that I was equally impacted as well. So there's a lot of education. There's a lot of putting people on the spot. There's a lot of calling people to the carpet. I just wish and I hope that Tamlin has an opportunity to redeem himself. And I hope that he has an opportunity to become who he's going to be, or just do away with him as a character. The other thing that I'm really hoping that we're going to get to see in future books is like Elaine's opportunity to explore the mating bond that the two of them have. I feel like they're moving it in the direction of the three sisters with the three brothers from the Night Court, and that's just kind of cliche and it's not fun. I mean, I see some potential opportunities between Azriel and Gwen. That seems to be like a good match. He saved her ultimately from her traumatic experience, and they seem to be well balanced. I want to see why Elaine is so opposed to the mating bond with Lucien, and I want to see that Lucien is given the opportunity to evolve. I could foresee something like, you know, Tamlin is taken out of the picture and Lucien is permanently stationed at the Spring Court, and as a result of being permanently established at the Spring Court, then, you know, Elaine is given the opportunity or wants the opportunity to be there with him because of Spring and her gardening and all of that stuff. So there's a good potential for that there. So overall, I thought that this book, this was a 5 out of 5 star for me. It brought up a lot of feeling and emotion, and clearly if Sarah J. Maas is able to bring up this level of, like, you know, emotion and feeling in me around a particular character, that says to me she's an amazing, amazing writer. So in terms of the books and how I loved them and my ranking of the books, this is a 5 star and number 1 for me. This is a 5 star and number 2 for me. Then I feel like Nesta's story is next, a 5 star for me. Then I liked this, which is a 4 star for me. And this, I still gave it a 5 star, but this is my least favorite book because this is where I feel like Feyre does a bunch of bullshit that she doesn't get called on the carpet for, that is all forgiven and forgotten and we're supposed to move on. And I think that it can be hypocritical and judgmental, and she does some things that I think are not okay when she expects Tamlin to be called to the carpet for the things that he's done. And so I didn't particularly care for her in this book as much, and so I was a little bit bothered about that. So that, I think this is my most emotional video, you guys, in terms of feeling like intently about it. But I just love, this was the first series outside of Cassandra Clare that I read that made me fall in love with reading again, made me fall in love with fantasy, made me fall in love with fantasy romance. Like, this just brought it all, and I absolutely adore this story, and I feel invested in it, and I feel like I want it to be the best that it can be, and so that's why I feel so passionate about my thoughts about where it's all coming from. So that is all that I have to say for today. You guys, thank you for hanging in there with me and listening to me rant and rave about this series. And don't mistake me, I absolutely love it, and I'm always going to love it, but I have high regard, and I want the next book to bring it in many, many, many ways. And I know that Sarah can do it, and I'm going to support her and be there. So that's all I have to say, and that is it. You guys know I upload new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm going to aim to upload a video this week, but I'm getting my second COVID vaccine tomorrow, and I hear that it's pretty intense, so I'll do my best. And if I miss it, I miss it, and if I don't, then great. That means I'm feeling good. But I'll see you guys in my next video. Thank you for all the love and all the support, and that's it. Bye! Mwah.